Today on Weekend Review, the port strike may have ended, but another strike has now started. A large amount of rainfall hit northwest BC, and Remembrance Day ceremonies were underway on Monday. Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Weekend Review, where we recap all the news here in the Northwest. On Monday, it was Remembrance Day, and a big turnout happened at the Terrace Cenotaph, with hundreds of citizens in attendance to pay tribute. Here's Jayleen Matthews of CFTK-TV.
On this chilly November morning, families and residents gathered to pay tribute to those who have served our country.
Fill this gathering with peace, gratitude, and a renewed commitment to the values they defended: freedom, justice, and dignity for all. May their legacy inspire us to be makers of peace in our homes, communities, and the world. Bless the families and the loved ones who have endured loss. Grant them comfort and the knowledge that their sacrifices are not forgotten. May we, in our remembrance, strive always to be worthy of their gift. Guide our thoughts and words today as we honor their lives, and may our actions reflect their commitment and courage.
By remembering their service and their sacrifice, we remember the tradition of freedom these men and women fought to preserve. They believe their actions in the present will make a significant difference for the future, but it is up to us to ensure that their dream is realized. On Remembrance Day, we acknowledge the courage and sacrifice those who serve their country and acknowledge our responsibility to work for the peace they fought to achieve.
The parade was followed to the cenotaph, where wreaths were laid. Veteran David Ross says he lost friends both in combat and military accidents during his service.
I think my message would be to remember those sacrifices that people have made for them. Don't ignore them. It's only one day in the year that we have this Remembrance Day parade, but they should be remembered almost every day of the year. Take time out, help us.
Newly elected MLA for Skeena, Claire Tay, stressed the value in freedom.
We are very, very blessed and fortunate to live in this country and to live in this province, to be able to live freely as we do. And I just hope that people always remember that, and specifically today, that they remember just how important that freedom is and how hard people have fought for it.
For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jayleen Matthews.
Now, employers at BC ports say pickets have come down at container terminals across the province, and cargo operations should resume at 4:30 on Thursday. And the Canada Industrial Relations Board made the order after Federal Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon directed it to intervene with negotiations under binding arbitration. And the dispute between employers and about 700 unionized supervisors had resulted in a lockout of more than a week at ports, including Vancouver's, Canada's busiest, as well as up here in Prince Rupert. And the BC Maritime Employers Association says the board has also scheduled a hearing next week for both sides in dispute to raise questions about McKinnon's decision to intervene. Now, in a release on Tuesday morning, Canada Post got a notification from the Canada Union of Postal Workers that they would be going on strike starting on Friday morning. But despite that strike notice, the union did also mention that its National Executive Board would not make a choice just yet on if a job action would happen with the board, With the strike already imminent as we speak, however, all signs point to the conflict not being solved over the weekend. And according to Stephen McKinnon, the Labour Minister, the federal government has been telling both sides to find some common ground and get a settlement done before the strike deadline passes. But even if the strike happens, Canada Post has stated that they will still find a way to keep delivering even while they continue to negotiate. Now, the Smithers Art Gallery is facing the closure of the Creation Station, where the town sent the gallery a letter on Halloween where they will have the Railway Avenue lease until August. And during the Smithers Committee of the Whole meeting on Wednesday night, manager Nicole Chernish brought up concerns to the council about what losing the space could mean. The gallery is looking to alternate options if the town does not renew the lease while programs continue to run. Now, a sizable donation has been made to the Rem Lee Hospital Foundation ahead of the Cassian Regional's hospital's soon-to-be expected opening. CFTK's Jaylee Matthews once again reports.
It has long been a stressful reality for Northwest mothers that if you or your newborn will require neonatal care, you can expect to get airlifted to Prince George or Vancouver. Over the last 3.5 years, 95 mothers with a birth emergency were transferred out of the region, and 55 newborns made those journeys as well. However, at the new Cassian Regional Hospital, this will no longer be the case. With the opening of their new $14.5 million Tier 3 neonatal intensive care unit and special care nursery facility. With expanded birthing capabilities, the unit will be able to support deliveries and newborn care at 34 weeks, and in emergent cases, 32 weeks, 5 weeks ahead of existing capacities. The unit has been a community effort with many organizations fundraising for the cause. The latest sizable donation comes from the Prince Rupert Port Authority, who have announced a $430,000 commitment through their Community Investment Fund. The Port Authority said in a statement, this investment will help keep patients closer to their homes, families, and support systems during their most physically and emotionally challenging days. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jayleen Matthews.
Now, recently it was revealed that 7 different dental care providers in Prince Rupert have become some of the first providers to link up with the new Canadian dental care program. But while several Prince Rupert providers were the first to actually sign up in noticeable numbers, they were not alone. The program has managed to reel in 5 terrace providers, 2 from Dodge and Geeds, 6 from Smithers, as well as 1 from Houston. The services that are offered by the Canadian Dental Care Program include x-rays, root canals, cleanings, and screenings for any oral diseases if someone may contract. In only a 6-month span, the program was able to reach the milestone of seeing over 1 million users join up. Up next, Coast Mountain College returns a totem pole model to its rightful owner. Welcome back. Well, Coast Mountain College was able to facilitate the return of a moving piece of family history to its rightful owner. And once again, here's Jaylee Matthews with more on this story.
And when I'm invited to talk, I always talk about my grandmother because I always felt like she never got the recognition she deserved during her life and even in the years since.
Luann Neal is the granddaughter of a trailblazing artist. Ellen Neal was a Kwakwaka'wakw woodcarver and one of the first women known to have professionally carved totem poles. Luann is also a carver and has been struggling to finish a piece for some time.
I didn't like the way the beak was, and I thought it doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right. When I study my grandmother's pieces, I've got my hands running all over and getting a real sense of how the width feels, how the tapering feels. So I'd hold my mask and go, it's all wrong, it's all wrong.
Luann then received a welcome gift.
Listeners tracked me down and said, hey, we've got a carving of your grandmother's. I actually had 2 other couples who also had not fully finished pieces that their parents had same story as this one, had specifically asked for an unfinished piece. There must have been something about that back in the 20s and 30s. People were fascinated to see something unfinished. And so those pieces came back to me.
Finally, Nikita Trimble Wilson from Coast Mountain College reached out to Neal. The college had obtained a piece they wanted to return to Neil, carved by her grandmother.
And when this piece came back, it was right when I was trying to figure out how to refine this eagle mask I'd been working on for quite a few years. I'm just learning on my own. And when I lined up this piece with the other 3 pieces I'd received, it gave me a perfect sequence of how each phase of the carving that I'm working on, how that should go. So needless to say, I've gotten a lot further probably since receiving this piece than I have in previous years, but it's just absolutely a joy because it feels like my grandmother still gets to mentor me through her pieces and through these pieces that are at different phases of being complete. And it also, I think, just gave me that little reminder that when you're given that ability and that desire to carve or do our forms of art, you don't take that lightly. Take it not so much seriously, but take it to heart and do your best job with it, and you can't go wrong.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now, the Kitimat RCMP put out their weekly report for the dates of October 31st to November 6th, where they had 4 different categories of reports. The region had a report of a possible intoxicated driver near 3 a.m. on October 31st, an egg thrown at a window on November 1st, 2 false calls to 911 from the Whitesale neighborhood, and 2 separate instances of impaired drivers who were given roadside suspensions for 90 days. And it was also revealed that Kitimat's Mayor Phil Germuth was once again re-elected to represent the municipality that he governs on the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikeen's Board of Directors. Germuth's path to being re-elected into this position was so clear that he did not face any opposition, however, and he first joined the board all the way back in 2012 when he served as an alternate director before he became an official director in 2014. Germuth even served as the board's chair between 2017 and 2023, but going back to the alternate director position, it was said that Kitimat councillor Terry Marlowe was selected to that position, so he will fill in for a principal director on the days that they cannot attend a meeting. And according to a recent report that was released by the BC Northern Real Estate Board, the third quarter of 2024 saw Prince Rupert's average selling prices of residential properties and sales volume increase a fair bit compared to the numbers during September of last year, which were at 115 properties worth $46.6 million. The number at September of this year jumped up to 126 properties worth $50.2 million. But despite those increases, the report did also disclose that within the same period of time, the home sales throughout the broad region did end up dipping a bit by about 8.7%. Prince Rupert's average price for a residential detached house was about $446,000 back in July, and by September, it had gone up to around $450,000, just a bit above the average price here in the north. After the break, Northwest BC got hit with a little more rain than usual. Welcome back. Well, between November 11th and the 22nd, the First Nations Climate Initiative is attending the United Nations Climate Conference in Azerbaijan with a specific goal in mind. And the initiative is planning on outlining the progress that they have made on their outgoing project, which is seeing them construct a renewable energy network that will cover all of Northwest BC. This is said to be the 3rd year in a row that the FNCI has joined the Canadian delegation at the conference, which is taking place this year in Baku, which is a place that requires traveling just off of the coast of the Caspian Sea. The project they are speaking on is officially called the North Coast Electrification Project, which is made up of 2 phases and is supposed to create a transmission line that spans from Prince George to Terrace and helps by creating clean energy for all Northwest residents. And last Friday, the River Forecast Center upgraded the flood watch to a flood warning for the North Coast, including Nass River and other surrounding areas around Stewart, Terrace, Prince Rupert, Kitimat, and other coastal communities.
A flood warning is in effect for the North Coast. That means that river levels have or will exceed bank full, and that flooding of areas adjacent will result. The River Forecast Center says it's an atmospheric river that has affected the area this week, with rainfall expected to taper soon. The BC River Forecast Center says that along with the heavy rain, warmer temperatures have caused snowmelt on the mountains, which has resulted in rising waters. Rivers are said to have been rapidly rising since Wednesday. Current flow conditions around Kitimat, Terrace, Nuayanch, and surrounding areas have been elevated, with flows in the 2 to 10 year flow range. The high waters have affected access to parks, with Kitimat closing access to several. And as you can see here behind me, where we would typically have a large beach area, the water has risen and is almost completely flooded out. The district of Kitimat has also issued a boil water notice to residents due to the flow. To safely consume, that water must be boiled for at least 60 seconds. For information on how to prepare for flood hazards, visit Prepared BC for emergency guides and resources. The River Forecast Center warns that fast-flowing rivers can pose an increased risk to safety. The public is advised to stay clear of the fast-flowing rivers. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now, with the massive amounts of rainfall leading to high water flows throughout northern BC, the district of Kitimat put out a boil water notice due to Kitimat's river's water being compromised. And all residents who know that they get their water from the Kitimat River were urged to boil their water for at least a minute before they consume it. And the heavy rain also led to the closing down of public areas like Hirsch Creek Park, Radley Park, and Dyke Road right on Columbia Avenue to keep people safe from the elevated river levels. And in fact, the water concerns even got so bad that a flood warning was issued for the entire North Coast. However, that has since been lifted. Still to come, local MLAs pay tribute to the passing of former MP John Horgan. Welcome back to our final segment. The Vanderhoof RCMP has launched an investigation into a number of disturbing letters that were mailed to a few staff members at Evelyn Dixon Elementary School. And at this time, the content of the letters have not been released due to the ongoing investigation. However, there has been an increase in concern in the Vanderhoof community. And on Monday, the SD 91's Board of Education put out a statement condemning the harassment and backing up their staff. And additionally, Vanderhoof Mayor Kevin Moutre, the following day, expressed his support for the staff, stating that these acts are completely unacceptable, illegal, and immoral. And over to some sad news that has sent shockwaves right across the province and prompted a torrent of tributes from former allies and rivals alike. Former BC Premier John Horgan died at 65 after a third bout with cancer. CTV's Rob Buffum reports more on this tragedy.
John Horgan, the only two-term NDP premier in BC history, died today at 65 years old following a battle with cancer. The hugely popular leader already being remembered as the people's premier.
There's only one John Horgan. He's a remarkable human being, the way that he had the ability to connect with people.
Following the 2017 election, Horgan forged an alliance with the BC Greens, giving the NDP power for the first time in 16 years and making the once reluctant leader premier and earning friends on all sides of the aisle.
Not your normal politician. What you saw with him is what you got. He was authentic. He showed leadership by empowering others around him.
He rolled the dice, calling a snap election partway through the pandemic and won a second term and a supermajority, a strong endorsement of his steady leadership during the pandemic.
He's a remarkable person, a really remarkable person.
Horgan left politics in 2022 following his cancer diagnosis, transitioning to be ambassador for Canada to Germany. He leaves a political legacy that includes eliminating MSP premiums and enshrining the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. But for many, his character is what looms largest. A sparkling sense of humor, passion for Star Trek, and the occasional choice word in a moment of frustration. Colleagues fought back tears remembering a man who cared deeply about British Columbians, was honest and real.
I think as someone who really loved this province.
Longtime colleague Mike Farnworth planned to see Horgan at hospital this morning, but just missed saying goodbye.
I was called this morning and told that he passed.
Horgan, partner to wife Ellie for 45 years and father to 2 grown sons, Nate and Evan.
His relationship with his family, his relationship with Ellie is one of the most moving things you could imagine, I think.
Former adversaries like Premier Christy Clark, toppled by that NDP Green agreement, today spoke of his common touch.
He had the gift of connecting with people. He made people feel good about, to the extent possible, about what government was doing.
And those he mentored, myriad, including Premier Eby.
I think for many British Columbians, he made them think differently about politics and about politicians. He was accessible, he was fun and funny, and he was called Premier Dad.
Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon worked as a Horgan staffer.
It didn't matter if you were left, right, center, up or down. People appreciated John. They appreciated the way he handled being Premier.
Ravi Parmar, now the MLA in Horgan's former Langford riding, was mentored by Horgan since he was a kid.
I first met John Horgan when I was in grade 5 a long time ago. Little did I know how much that interaction at a young age would mean to me. I've worked every day over the past year and a half to try to fill his shoes in Langford, but there's no way that you can fill those massive Doc Martens.
The man who led the NDP out of the political wilderness, steered the province through a pandemic, most missed already for his down-to-earth decency, somehow befitting a beloved leader and premier who preferred being called John from Langford. Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
And in the wake of John Horgan's passing, former Skeena MLA Ellis Ross had some words to say in reflection of the leader that he sat opposed to.
Away from the political arena, he was actually a really good guy. I remember he was brand new to being a premier, and he had family and friends that he was turning through the legislature. And I went running up the stairs from the restaurant, and he stopped on the stairs. And he said, "Oh, I want to introduce you to the MLA from Skeena, just recently elected." And so this is Ellis Ross. So number one, I was pretty surprised that he would do that, always given the politics. And number two, I was surprised he remembered my name and remembered my riding. And I was really grateful for that. So away from the political arena, he was a really good guy. He was a really good man.
Now, of course, this past Monday was Remembrance Day, and despite the town of Smithers happening to experience some rainy weather that particular day, it did not stop many people from going outside to commemorate veterans. Veterans Peace Park was the home for the 2024 Remembrance Day ceremony, where attendees saw a parade held to begin, with people starting at the local Legion before marching to the send-off for the actual ceremony itself, followed by a toast at the local Legion. And it was also revealed that as of this Friday, November 15th, no parking will be allowed on the city streets in the city of Terrace until April 1st. And this rule is put into place to allow the streets to be cleared so that snow plowing can be done when winter is in full force. And that'll be all for this week's edition of Week in Review, and you can join us for more on our regular newscast here on CFTK-TV at Monday at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.